So you now have an excellent plan with all of your different arguments. You've remembered all of your persuasive writing theory and your form techniques, so now you can get started and write. No, back up. Before you write anything, you've got to consider the structure of your answer. Now, this is the main area where students fall down in the exam. Remember, you need to write a coherent piece of writing, not just chunks of good ideas. You need to stitch them together so it reads like one complete piece. The topic is usually about a crisis, so a good way to make sure there's a common thread is to use language that reflects that. Be careful not to go over the top or be too dramatic, but you can use words like urgent and imperative throughout your answer to get across that sense of importance. Also, another way to make sure your writing is coherent is to have a central motif. So if you look at your plan that you've drafted, think about what motif might best represent your argument. For example, if you're writing about an injustice, you could use a prison motif to convey a sense of power imbalance. So for that, you'd use words like locked and chains, punishing, imprisoned. Or if your answer is about some sort of uncertainty, you could use a sailing motif. And for that, you'd use nautical language, words like navigate and turbulent. You could even use metaphors as well, things like being at sea or in choppy waters. You don't need to lay it on too thick, just one or two nods towards your central motif in each paragraph. It will really help create that sense of coherence. Now let's look at your introduction. Think about it like an umbrella. It's going to cover your whole argument and all of your separate paragraphs. Don't try to cram everything into your introduction. Save the best bits for later on, but equally, and this is a top tip here, don't start with anything too vague or wishy-washy. Something like, this is a very important issue with lots of perspectives to consider. I can see why students in an exam might be tempted to write that. It's safe and puts words on the page and it gets you started, but it's also a total yawn fest for the examiner and it doesn't really say anything about your argument. So instead, start with a bang. Drop the reader in, show them exactly what side of the fence you're on with this argument. Be the opposite of safe. Tell the reader you are outraged by this topic, and that way you'll immediately grab the attention of the examiner. It's a bit like you clapping from the other side of the paper and saying, listen up, I'm a top grade student, let me show you why. And if the topic is about a crisis, you can always use that word in the introduction. Next, zoom out. Set the scene, give some wider context about the topic, explain why it's an issue in the first place, use the information that you've gleaned from the extract to give some detail. And give a personal anecdote. Now, it doesn't have to be anything deep and meaningful, but it is good to stick to something that you know, either a memory or an experience of something, perhaps a holiday or a hobby you have. That way, the passion that you're writing about in your argument is sincere. So tell the reader why you care about the issue. It's really going to help you give some individuality to your answer, which is crucial if you want that high mark. So this method will also make sure that your answer is completely waffle-free and will keep you on task. Another top tip here is that lots of students struggle to get each of their paragraphs started after their introduction, especially when it's to switch to a new argument. I've seen lots of essays start with furthermore for every paragraph in their answer, or sometimes students will just blurt out their argument in the first sentence, which is just a bit clunky. It's a bit like a rough gear change in an old car, whereas you want your writing to be seamless and flow. So I also think furthermore, especially if it's in a letter, it sounds a bit pompous, so it's best avoided, I think. So instead, if for a more sophisticated, higher grade answer, here's some words to start a paragraph. Similarly, conversely, however, additionally. Now, the last point to remember here for your structure, this is a really important one, because the question requires you to remember quite a lot of techniques and theories, you need to write eloquently, with purpose, etc. You might just forget to enjoy yourself. And if you can't quite manage that, then at least remember to make your answer personal. Make sure the examiner can hear your voice. Write with a bit of passion, like you really do care about this topic, even if the topic isn't something you particularly care about. What you do care about is getting a good grade. So harness that passion and inject it into your answer. That way your writing is going to have a bit more of a spark. So in summary then, be cohesive. Sew your paragraphs together. Choose a central motif and thread that through your writing. If the question is about a crisis, adjust your language to reflect that. Remember to make your first paragraph impactful. Start with a bang. Use a powerful sentence, and then zoom out, contextualize the topic, and give a reason why the topic matters to you personally. Mix up your paragraph starters, include things like similarly, conversely, etc. Include a counter argument. Make yourself heard. Care about what you're writing about. It's an exam, but don't leave your individualism outside. It's a formal, of course, but bring yourself in. And lastly, end on a powerful sentence. Leave the examiner as alert as when they started. Remind them that you're a confident student who's in control of your writing. Ask.